My sister betrayed me with my husband, and my own family helped her hide it. Ryan and I were 6 years in. 32, both of us. Good at the little rituals, Sunday coffee, grocery runs, who does dishes when one of us cooks. We argued like normal people and made up like people who know how to love. Nothing flashy. Just quiet, decent love that felt like a house with good bones. 8 months before the collapse, my sister's star drifted back into our orbit like a storm in a pretty coat. 28, Florida sunburn fading, suitcase that wouldn't close, story that wouldn't quite line up. Her long-term boyfriend had done her dirty, she said. Cheating. With men. It didn't fit the guy I'd met 3 times in 5 years. It sounded like a twist from a late-night soap, one of those lines she'd repeat until it hardened into truth. I tried to text him once to check on her, found myself blocked. Fine. Door closed. I let it go. Star moved into my parents' house, Gina and Jimmy, mid-50s, fragile marriage balanced on the spine of my mother's certainty. If you ask her, she never plays favorites. If you ask me, favoritism was the background radiation of our childhood. Not loud. Just 1,000 silent votes for Star. When we were 16, I got an 8-year-old Dodge Neon that whistled when it hit 40. She got a 2-year-old Eclipse with a stereo that could lift wallpaper. Her dance competitions cost thousands. No questions. When I wanted $50 to join a local sports camp, suddenly the family budget was a church sermon and I was the sinner. Once, I came home 15 minutes past curfew and lost my car for a month. The next year, Star rolled in 2 hours late, smelling like weed, and left the kitchen with a lecture and a milkshake. It was like that. Always like that. So when she couldn't find work, I did the thing an older sister does when she's still trying to be the bigger person. I asked Ryan if he knew anyone hiring. He's high up at his company, diplomatic, good at pulling doors open. He nudged. She slipped into a spot in his department. Her field, decent pay, respectable title. Everyone clapped. I told myself, this is good. We're adults. We can be sisters now. She started showing up more after that. Dropping by for coffee, staying through dinner. Borrowing my cardigan and never returning it. Laughing a little too quickly at Ryan's jokes. At first, I convinced myself it meant she was trying. Then I saw the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. The way they'd fall into long work conversations that had nothing to do with work. The way they built a small country out of inside jokes, then stamped my passport invalid with a shrug. Oh, just a work thing. I asked Ryan about it one night when the dishwasher hummed and the house was a soft, warm cave. He smiled, careful. Said they had a lot in common. Said they were collaborating across teams and she was quick, curious, easy to talk to. I heard what he meant. I still told myself to relax. Our schedules didn't help. Ryan worked 8 to 4:30. I worked 10 to 7. On the days Star stopped by after work, I often came home to find her already at the kitchen island. Apple slices on a cutting board she never cleaned right. Ryan perched across from her like they were filming a commercial for domestic ease. They would finish work stuff, and she'd head back to my parents' place like a cat who planned to come back tomorrow. It happened enough that my stomach forgot how to unclench. Then came the pillowcases. I am, to my bones, a bedmaker. I make it the same way every morning. Pull smooth. Tuck neat. And I always turn the open ends of the pillowcases toward the edges of the bed. Always. It is a ritual that turns a day into a day. That evening, Star had been over. We ate together. She left with one of my mugs tucked under her arm, like she owned the letter S emblazoned on it. Later, when I pulled back our covers, I froze. 2 of the pillows had their openings toward the middle. Not the edges. Not my way. Not my hands. Were you in the bed today? I asked Ryan. I tried to sound breezy. Failed. He paused. Maybe a quarter second. Barely anything. But I know the orchestra of his face and a new instrument had arrived. No, he said easy. You probably remembered wrong. I didn't. I stood there with a heartbeat in my ears. You remembered wrong. It slid over my skin like oil. I swallowed it, then hated myself for swallowing it. I checked his phone in the shower steam and his laptop while the coffee brewed. Nothing. Of course there was nothing. They were together all day. Why would they leave a trail when they had a highway? 2 weeks later, my parents invited us over for dinner, and I said yes because saying no turns into a lecture with my mother about gratitude. The table was too polished, the roast too dry, the conversation too careful. Then Ryan walked by Star on his way to the sink. She reached up to touch his arm like she owned his trajectory. He leaned, just slightly. She said something I couldn't hear. Their foreheads touched for a second. 2 heartbeats. A quick, private eclipse. Then Ryan jerked away like he'd remembered the room, and Star turned and smiled at me. Small. Intentional. A match held to a fuse. On the drive home, my chest felt like a locked drawer. I stared out at the dark and told myself I was wrong. I told myself I'd imagined the tilt of a head, the brush of skin, the flicker of guilt. I told myself so many stories that by the time we turned onto our street, I wasn't sure what I'd seen or what I'd invented. That's what betrayal does. It turns your mind into a house of mirrors and hands you a candle made of smoke. I booked a weekend in the city. Boutique hotel. Great food. Music. Space. I told myself I would ask him there, away from the gravity of our kitchen, away from the walls where we learned each other's shadows. I wanted a clean answer in a clean place. Friday night was perfect in a way that felt like a dare. We dressed up. We ordered dumb, fancy cocktails with too much ice and little herbs that look like they should be planted instead of sipped. We danced. We laughed. We were intimate. I fell asleep with my cheek on his shoulder and told myself, see? See? On Saturday morning, I looked at him in that soft hotel light, the kind that forgives everything, and nearly said nothing. Nearly let the weekend keep its glitter. Nearly chose denial for one more day. Are you having an affair with my sister? I asked. He didn't even try to find a version of the truth that wasn't true. His eyes filled. He said yes. The world did not end with a bang. It ended like a quiet room losing its air. A collapsing in. A small, neat death. Why? My voice sounded like it came from the bathroom tile. He said he didn't mean for it to happen. They clicked. One day they were talking, and the talking became something else, and then a kiss, and then more. He said it like he'd tripped down the stairs and landed in someone else's life. I asked if they'd used our bed while I was at work. He turned his face away and let shame answer for him. I stood up, picked up my purse, walked out of that hotel room like I was late for my own life. I drove home with the window cracked and the radio off. He Ubered after with my things, stood in our doorway trying to pour apologies onto a floor that would not absorb them. I packed a bag for him. He left for a hotel. The house changed shape around me. The next day I sat across from my parents on their couch, which has held more arguments than cushions. Ryan confessed, I said. With Star. They already knew. Of course they did. My mother's sorry was light as steam. We're sorry it happened, she said. It. Like a door left open. It shouldn't have happened this way. This way. Not that it shouldn't have happened. But your sister deserves to be happy too. You'll meet someone, and we can put this behind us. I told her about the tag on the photo and the text Star sent me afterward. I told her about the caption. Feeling loved. I told her it felt like being stabbed with a spoon. My mother pressed her lips together like I'd brought mud onto the rug. You shouldn't be on that stuff anyway, she said. My father said nothing. When I asked what he thought, he stared at the wall and said, I agree with your mother, like he was reading the rules of the house. So I made a decision. No contact. With Star. With Ryan. With my parents. I changed locks and passwords and the part of me that still waited for my mother to choose me. I met with a lawyer. Ryan promised the house and savings in a rush of guilt, then backpedaled 2 days later. Hello, Star's voice in his ear about splitting the house. He didn't know I'd already moved the savings into a new account the second the confetti of my life hit the floor. One less battle. 9 years. Gone. Not wasted, I refuse that word, but gone like a street you no longer live on. Somewhere else, in some other version of my life, I might have begged. Bargained. Built a room in my chest for their excuses. In this version, I chose a different architecture. Star did what Star does. Cruelty as sport. She posted the selfie of him kissing her cheek and made sure I saw it. She sent the half apology that wasn't an apology at all. No hard feelings. You'll meet your soulmate someday too. I blocked her. She found new ways to slide beneath doors. I blocked those too. I put the house on the market. Packed boxes. Packed my heart. Started looking at maps like they were menus. Minnesota didn't start as a dream. It started as a pin in a place where nobody knew me, where winters were honest and summers smelled like cut grass, where I could be a person without a history trailing behind me, pointing and naming and claiming. The night the realtor called to confirm the listing, I sat on the floor of my living room and cried into a sweater I'd never see again. The carpet smelled like lemon cleaner and the end of something. It's strange to grieve a house when the house did nothing wrong. It's stranger not to. I thanked it anyway. For sheltering me. For knowing the sound of my barefoot rush down the hallway when the kettle whistled. For holding the ghost of the life I thought I'd have until I stopped needing to touch it. On moving day, I kept expecting my mother to appear. To say something motherly and wrong, like, "You'll regret this," or "You can't run forever," or "Family is family." She didn't show. Neither did my father. Neither did Star. The only people who came were the movers, a neighbor who kept forgetting my name, and a woman from the title company who had the softest hands and the kindest eyes and somehow knew when to pass me tissues without turning me into a charity case. 3 days later, my car hummed past the state line and into a new sky. A different radio station. A diner off the highway with coffee that tasted like it remembered being beans. I checked into a short-term rental with thin walls and kinder neighbors. One of them lent me a power drill. Another handed over a pie. People underestimate pies. There are pies you eat and pies that tell you not to give up. I found a therapist who didn't let me wave away my pain with a quick joke. I started sleeping through the night in small, brave installments. I learned where the good produce was and how to navigate streets that ended in letters instead of names. I bought a used kitchen table that had seen better holidays and promised it some new ones. I turned the key every evening and said out loud, "Home," until the word meant me. And, because I am human and stubborn and hopeful in all the foolish ways that make life worth this mess, I tried dating too soon. Everyone does it. I dressed up, met a man with nice elbows and worse opinions, pretended for 90 minutes that chemistry could be faked, and went home utterly certain I was done. Swore off men like you swear off sugar after a week of cupcakes. Therapy then. Real therapy. The kind where you sit and say the ugliest things and nobody flinches. Where you admit the part of you that still wants your mother to say, "I'm sorry." Where you leave with a small, warm stone in your chest that turns out to be your own voice. Months later, I met James. He smelled faintly of roasted garlic and clean linens, like a restaurant after closing. 37. Chef. Laughs with his whole torso. Owns a place with his fraternal twin, Jack, where the servers say hello like they mean it and the regulars know which table is yours. He didn't try to fix me. He brought me water. He remembered my order. He tilted his head when I talked like he was listening for the notes beneath the melody. It wasn't fireworks. It was a pilot light catching. Warmth. Steady. Real. We fell in love like a kitchen learns your hands. Slowly. Thoroughly. With burn scars and band-aids and then a dance you don't have to think about. He proposed in the empty dining room after hours, fairy lights winking off wine glasses, the whole place smelling like basil and butter. He said, "I know what it means to stay." I said yes because I recognized the truth in his voice. Sometimes love sounds like a promise to stack chairs with you when nobody's looking. 9 months after I left Missouri, a wedding invitation found me anyway. Ryan and Star, wrapped in a sunflower field like a glossy brochure. Inside was a note from my parents, written in a tone that tried to sound wise and landed in smug. "Family works through problems," it said. "Star wants you to be a bridesmaid, just like she was for you." I did not respond. I tracked the leak in the family tree. Then I pruned. I wish I could say that was the last time their shadows crossed my doorstep. It wasn't. But before the next knock, I needed to finish building my walls. Not the kind that keep love out, the kind that keep me inside my own life, safe and warm, while the wind howls and the past pounds its fists on wood that will not break. Which is how, on one unremarkable Tuesday, I ended up staring at my front door while Ryan knocked like a salesman with a discount on regret. He looked good. Too good. Crisp shirt. Fresh shave. The old cologne that used to mean date night and now smelled like a lie. I opened the door because I am polite when I should not be. "What do you want?" I asked. "I'm sorry," he said, and for a second I remembered the way he handed me coffee on Sunday mornings, the way he tucked my hair behind my ear with his ring catching the light. Then the memory cracked. "Star and I are divorcing," he added. "She was unfaithful our whole marriage. I don't expect you to take me back. I just want closure." "No," I said. He blinked. People aren't ready for clean answers. He tried again, softening the edges with a smile he used to deploy like a magic trick. "We could talk. Get closure." "You made your bed," I said. "Did you think the revolving door she kept would turn into a locked gate because you put a ring on it?" "I don't forgive you. I don't want anything from you. Go to hell." I shut the door. Called my landlady, who is a retired queen with 2 nephews and a permanent frown for nonsense. 5 minutes later, Ryan was escorted off the property and informed that any return would result in a police report. He left with his hands up and his hope folded into a pocket where it could suffocate in peace. The next night, he tried again, this time in James's restaurant. Sat across from me like we were old, weary friends. James walked over and asked, "Want me to kick him out?" I said, "Not yet, because curiosity is a small, loud animal." "What happened?" I asked Ryan. "With Star. She had at least 2 affairs with married men by year 2, he said. I stayed almost another year so I could stash savings and sell a few assets. She left with a fraction." "And now?" I asked. "She's back with your parents," he said. That was the click I needed. Not joy. Not vengeance. Just the small, precise sound of a puzzle piece dropping into place. Consequences. At last. "That's all," I said. "You can go." He tried to harvest a last scrap of dignity. James pointed at the door. The bartender stopped polishing a glass and made a face like he'd seen something sour. 2 servers who love me like a cousin crossed their arms. Ryan left with his shoulders curved in like parentheses around a sentence that no longer wanted him. James's family called me that night and insisted I stay with him for a couple of days, just in case Ryan decided that closure meant stalking. I said yes. We ate pasta too late and fell asleep too early and woke up to the sound of the espresso machine warming the kitchen like a promise. Safety can be a taste. That should have been the end of it. But when you close a chapter, the story doesn't always obey. Sometimes it sends one more test. One more knock. One more we're family message designed to pry you open and pour the past back in. I didn't know it yet, but that knock was coming. And this time, it would arrive wearing a hospital bracelet and my mother's old voice, the one she uses when she wants something and calls it love. I wish I could tell you that after Ryan's little encore, life smoothed out and played soft jazz in the background. It did for a while. We found our pace. I learned James's kitchen the way you learn someone's laugh, by heart. His twin, Jack, teased me like a brother almost immediately, and his parents adopted me in that quiet, practical way good people do, a casserole on hard days, a text me when you get home, after late nights, a chair saved at every table. I took a part-time job managing the office side of the restaurant because the place needed someone who spoke paperwork and panic. I speak both. The staff taught me their nicknames for the regulars. The regulars learned mine. I discovered the magic of pre-service minutes, those little slices of calm when the dining room is set, the lights are warm, and the night hasn't decided what kind of story it wants to be. And yes, we fell into a life that felt like it might actually last. Then the universe decided to show off its messy sense of humor. One night, after the whole Ryan situation, James's parents insisted I stay at their house for a couple of days, just to be safe. We obeyed. We slept under a quilt his grandmother made from old shirts that smelled faintly of laundry and time. Months later, we learned that safety sometimes looks like a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. We told his parents, and they both swore they didn't plan it, then laughed like maybe they'd manifested it anyway. That baby, the one who arrived squalling and perfect and alive, turned our rooms into galaxies and our calendar into a hymn. A few years after that, his brother joined the chaos with the loudest lungs and the softest hair, and we were officially 4 people who had to figure out how to love each other on very little sleep. If you've never watched a man you love become a father, I hope life gives you that gift someday. James at 3 a.m. with a burp cloth slung over his shoulder, shushing like a spell, is a picture I tuck under my tongue when the world gets mean. We learned things. Like how some arguments are just hunger in disguise. Like how it's okay to serve frozen waffles for dinner if you put them on a nice plate. Like how a family isn't the people who share your last name, it's the people who share the last piece of pie and pretend they weren't hungry anyway. For a while, I lived in a soft bubble where the worst thing that happened was running out of coffee filters. Then the messages started. It was a trickle at first. A cousin liking a photo of the baby. An aunt with a "miss you, sweetie" comment under a picture of my basil plant. I ignored them. Then my mother found me again, because of course she did. She sent a paragraph that said everything and nothing. "We've all made mistakes," she wrote. "Family is about forgiveness." Then, like a cherry on spoiled milk, "How is my grandson?" I should have let it rot in the inbox. I couldn't. Something ignited in me I didn't know still had fuel. "You don't have grandchildren," I typed. "I'm not your daughter. My children are not related to you. If you want a grandchild, encourage Star to do what she does best." Block. New account. Block. A third one. Block. A message through a cousin. Block the cousin. The bubble thinned, but it didn't pop. I built thicker walls. I kissed my baby's damp heads and told myself I was done bleeding for people who called it love. Then the knock came with a hospital bracelet. Not literally. It was a Zoom window, not a door. But it felt the same. A boundary breached, a request dressed as a reunion, a hand outstretched with nails sharpened by need. The messages had escalated from guilt to demand to something that tasted like panic. "We need to talk. It's serious. Please." My mother pleaded. My father, the human ellipsis, added a line that didn't sound like him at all. "We're getting older. We need you." And Star, of all people, sent, "Please, I have to talk to you. Just me. No one else." I agreed to one call. Just me. No kids. No James in frame. Boundaries like duct tape, ugly, strong, necessary. The screen flickered, and there they were. My mother's face was older and not in the way that tugs your heart. My father looked like a chair that had lost a leg. Star looked worn, as if life had finally started collecting its bills from her, and she didn't have the right currency. They started with a warm-up of apologies like a choir that hadn't rehearsed. "We're sorry. We didn't handle things right. We miss you. We want our family back." Star stared into the camera with eyes so big I could see my own reflection in them, and for a mean half-second I wondered if that was the point. "Is that all you've got?" I asked when they ran out of script. Because if the pitch is "forgive us because we're related," I'm going to hang up and finish my tea. The facade slumped like wet cardboard. The truth stood up. Star's kidneys were failing. She needed a transplant. "A family member is the most likely match," my mother said, and the way she hit the word "family" made it sound like a password, not a promise. There it was. Not love. Logistics. "Let me understand," I said. "You'd like me to fly back to the state where you chose my sister's happiness over my marriage, get poked and scanned like a science project, and if the universe is feeling cruel, give her a piece of my body to fix the mess she made of her life." Mom snapped that the past was a long time ago. Tears bloomed. Dad, for the first time in years, assembled a sentence that wasn't a copy of hers. He talked about medical bills, about lost work, about the house being at risk. He said, "We like a boat taking on water." Then he looked straight into the camera and said, "We need you." Star leaned forward, voice small. "I don't want to die. Please. I need my big sister." There are moments when the room splits in two. On one side is the person you were raised to be, the good girl, the peacemaker, the one who keeps the table set even after the guests have flipped it. On the other is the person you built from the rubble, the woman who understands that compassion without boundaries is self-harm dressed up in a halo. "I'll think about it," I said. "I'll do the labs here. If I'm a match, we'll talk." I ended the call and stared at my own face in the black screen for a long time. James sat next to me on the couch like an anchor that knew how to be gentle. "Whatever you choose," he said, "I'm with you." Then he asked, "Should we all go? Or just me with you?" I shook my head. If I go, I said, I go alone. I went to the hospital the next morning. The tech drew blood like she was extracting something besides numbers, like she was siphoning doubt and history and the residue of 1,000 small betrayals. I held gauze to the crook of my arm and tried not to imagine the future as an operating room with my body opened for someone who wouldn't even offer me a clean apology. The results came back a week later with the kind of irony that makes poets roll their eyes. Perfect match. Not just compatible. Perfect. The doctor's eyebrows even did that surprised little jump doctors do when the universe gives them a neat answer. I booked a ticket to St. Charles. Packed a small suitcase with 2 changes of clothes, a notebook, a pen, and the part of me that knows how to stay upright when the wind hits sideways. Star was already admitted when I arrived. My parents had tried to bait me with dinner plans and a list of little things we need help with while you're here, and I told them my plate was full. Hospital first. Everything else was a void. Her room smelled like sanitizer and the edge of a cliff. Machines hummed. Star lay in the middle of it all, still Star, pretty even when sick, eyes that made you want to hand her whatever she asked for just to watch the light come back. If she hadn't been my sister, I might have felt softer. But she was. And I remembered everything. The transplant team went through the spiel in the family consult room. Timelines. Risks. Meds. Recovery. Your compatibility is exceptional, the surgeon said, glancing between me and a chart that said fate is a comedian. Finding a better match would be unlikely. The sooner we schedule, the better the outcome. We all went to Star's room for the final "Do we have consent?" chorus. My mother took my hand like we were in a play, and this was the reconciliation scene. My father hovered near the curtain like he'd learned how to be a person a few minutes earlier and didn't want to mess it up. Star stared at me as if she could will me into being the version of me that always chose her. I walked to her bedside and took her hand. It was warm and small and familiar. It was also a hand that had texted feeling loved, with my husband's lips pressed to her cheek. "Did you hear the doctors?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "I'm a perfect match. Essentially, I am the only person in this world who can save you." Her breath hitched. Hope skittered over her face like sunlight. She squeezed. "I know," she whispered. Thank you. Thank you for I'm not going to." Silence hit the room like a dropped tray. The nurse's pen stopped moving. The monitor kept beeping, cheerful and oblivious. My mother made a sound that didn't have words in it. My father's mouth opened and closed twice, a fish discovering air. Star's face crumpled in a way I had never seen, a small implosion, quieter than I would have expected. "You destroyed my life," I said to her, not unkind, but not gently either. "You slept with my husband. You posted about it like you were proud. You sent me a text telling me I'd find my soulmate someday, as if you hadn't just kneecapped mine. When I went no contact, you stayed silent and let our parents send me letters about putting it behind us because you were too busy being happy to notice the house you'd burned." She tried to speak. I held up a hand. "I came here to make sure you would understand this. The one person who could keep you alive is the one person you taught yourself to live without. Actions have consequences. You taught me that lesson with a sledgehammer." I'm handing it back, carefully, with gloves on. My mother lunged for my arm like she could pull me back into our old orbit by force. "Stop this. This is not who you are. You're being vindictive. You're going to let your sister die." "This is exactly who I am," I said. "Someone who finally understands that love without respect is a trap. That forgiveness without accountability is a costume. That you don't earn my body just because we share blood." My father barked a word I won't repeat. The doctor looked like she wanted to vanish. The nurse stared at a spot on the wall and became furniture. I turned to my parents. "Don't speak to me again," I said. "Do not ask me for money. Do not ask me for time. The only money I will ever spend on you will be for your funerals, and only if I get to decide where the ashes go." I let that hang in the air like the chime at the end of a meditation, pure, undeniable, final. I squeezed Star's hand once more. I didn't squeeze hard. I didn't need to. "You taught me what family means," I said. "I believed you for too long. I believe me now." I walked out of that room with my back straight and my heart shaking like a leaf in a storm. I made it down the hallway to the elevator before my knees considered negotiation. I pressed the button and stared at my own reflection in the steel doors. I expected to see a villain. I expected to hate her. I didn't. I saw a woman who finally stopped setting herself on fire to keep other people warm. In the lobby, the volunteer behind the desk asked if I needed anything. I said no and meant it. I stepped outside and let the Missouri heat slap my face and thought, I am done. Not the done I'd said before, the one you whisper to yourself like a bedtime story and then ignore in the morning. The real kind. The kind that rearranges your bones. On the plane home, a baby too rose up cried for 20 minutes straight while his mother whispered, I know, like a prayer. I closed my eyes and let the noise braid itself into the story of my day. Somewhere over a line the pilot didn't announce, I forgave myself for not being the saint my mother wanted me to be. Saints are lonely. Saints bleed out. I have children to raise and a man to grow old with and a restaurant family that knows how I take my coffee. I don't have to be good for people who never learned how to be good to me. James met me at the airport with a hug that made everything go quiet. The boys were with his parents making kitchen chaos and demanding pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. We drove home with the windows down and the radio low, passing the places that make up our life. The park where we've pushed 100 swings, the grocery store where the cashier calls me hon and sneaks lollipops into tiny hands. The corner where Jack once attempted to parallel park the delivery van and invented new curse words. At a red light, James glanced over. Do you want to talk about it? He asked. Not yet, I said. Just hold my hand. He did. The light turned green. We went home. That night, I stood at our sink, washing the day off a handful of grapes while the boys argued about which dinosaur was in charge. I felt the old ache, the one that whispers, maybe you were too harsh, maybe you should have given them one last chance, creep up like fog, and then I remembered my mother's voice calling the past a long time ago and Star's fingers around my husband's forearm. I remembered the pillowcases facing inward like a secret, and I let the ache pass through me without unpacking its suitcase. The next morning, my phone lit up with numbers I didn't know. I flipped it face down and poured cereal into small bowls like a queen doling out treasure. Milk splashed. Tiny spoons clinked. The day began the way good days do, messy, loud, ordinary, ours. I braced for a new storm: calls, threats, guilt disguised as love. A part of me expected a police officer at my door with words like moral obligation and family. That isn't how it went. There were messages, of course. Please. Then curses. Then silence. People who used to mistake my kindness for a blank check finally ran out of ink. I wish this story ended cleanly at that hospital door. It doesn't. Stories like mine never end cleanly. They end, and then they echo. They repeat until you learn to hear them differently, until the sound becomes a lesson instead of a wound. I learned mine. The hard way. The only way some lessons stick. And just when I thought the echoes had faded, the next knock found me anyway. Different tone. Different stakes. Same old script trying to get me to step into a role I no longer play. There's a kind of quiet that only shows up after you choose yourself. It doesn't arrive with trumpets. It's not fireworks and champagne. It's the hush in your own chest when the arguing stops. It's the way a house sounds when everyone inside knows they're safe. After the hospital, that quiet started to live with me. It sat at our table. It followed me to work. It climbed into bed and tucked the blanket around my knees. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. And I realized that steadiness is the kind of miracle you don't notice until you've lived too long without it. For a while, we just lived. The boys grew like weeds that laughed at tape measures. James and Jack opened the second location. I handled schedules, invoices, the 1,000 tiny flames that try to light all at once when a business is busy and humans are human. We learned how to tag team sick days and school projects and the art of getting 2 kids in shoes while a dog tries to eat a sock. I kept my boundaries like windows, clear, strong, letting in light but not the storm. No contact stayed no contact. I meant it. Then came the letter. Not a call. Not a text. A letter, heavy paper that smelled faintly of the drawer it had slept in too long. My name on the front in my mother's handwriting, the one that had filled permission slips and holiday cards and tiny notes tucked near lunchboxes and, later, envelopes that said forgiveness like an order. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and made dinner. Tiny hands snuck carrot sticks and lied badly. I pretended not to see. After the boys were asleep, I brewed tea, sat at the table, and slid a finger under the flap. The paper whispered. Inside, an apology that read like a resume, lists of regrets without verbs, a paragraph about how life is short, and the line I knew was coming. Please don't let your sister's mistake overshadow the love we have as a family. Mistake. As if she took the wrong exit and would have turned around if the scenery hadn't been so pretty. At the end, a note in my father's smaller, neater hand. We're selling the house. Too many bills. We wanted you to hear it from us. I sat with that for a long time. Not the money part. The word part. Mistake. Family. Hear it from us. Words are tools. In the right hands, they build bridges. In the wrong, they pry up floorboards and pretend it's a remodel. I burned the letter in the backyard fire pit behind the herb garden, under a sky that looked like velvet and a moon that looked like a nail clipping. I watched the paper curl and blush, then blacken and float. I did not make a wish. I did not say goodbye. Some things don't deserve ceremony. A month later, a different envelope arrived. Thinner. Typed. From an attorney in Missouri. Star had listed me as a potential relative donor of interest in some paperwork, and the hospital required formal documentation of my refusal for their files. It was clinical and mercifully short. I signed. I sent it back. I slept like a stone. You'd think that would be the end. But endings are untidy. They leave threads. One of those threads was named Audrey, the neighbor girl who used to sit on my porch steps the summer I got braces, licking popsicles and asking if I thought high school would kill us. We drifted, then found each other again 2 years after I moved, courtesy of a mutual friend and the internet that never forgets. She messaged me out of the blue. Not sure if you want to know, but Star is in and out of the hospital. Your parents sold the house and moved to a small rental near the highway. Your mom is working part-time at a thrift store. Your dad fixes lawnmowers in someone's shed. It's different. I stared at the message and felt nothing dramatic. Just the sensation of a puzzle fitting itself without my help. I wrote back, thank you. Please don't send pictures. How are you? We sent photos of our kids' terrible art and our husbands failing at IKEA. We laughed. We did not bond over schadenfreude. We bonded over surviving the ache of growing up where you felt like a guest in your own home. It helped. It healed. A year slipped by. Seasons put on their costumes. The restaurant won a local family favorite award. The boys discovered worms and the power of mud. I learned that I like quiet birthdays, a long walk, a bakery box, a handwritten card. One morning, in that soft pre-bustle before service, I found James at the host stand, frowning at a calendar like it had owed him money and skipped town. What? I asked. He grinned, embarrassed. Our anniversary. I wanted to surprise you with a trip. But I also don't want to die by leaving Jack under 2 locations during patio season. We booked 2 nights in a cabin an hour away instead. Trees. A lake. A bed that creaked like it remembered better days. The second evening, the sun sank behind the water in that show-off way sunsets do, and I told him all the things I'd never said out loud in one stretch. How the pillowcases still sometimes popped into my head like a cruel slide. How the hospital smell could grab me if a TV show got too close to a beeping machine. How my mother's voice lived in my spine like an old splinter that flares when it rains. He listened, hand warm on my knee, and didn't try to fix a single thing. When he finally spoke, he said, "You don't owe them your healing. Keep the parts you want. Burn the rest." Simple, kind, true. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a voicemail I didn't plan to check. Habit made me swipe anyway. A hesitant voice, "Hi. You don't know me. I'm married to one of the men who, anyway, I found your number through Audrey. I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to tell you that the thing with Star destroyed our marriage and then she left him too. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know, she's the kind of storm that looks like weather until you realize it's a pattern. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. But I did pull the car over and breathe through a wave that was not grief and not joy. It was relief. Not because someone else hurt. Because the story I knew was true did not require me to keep proving it. 2 weeks later, we hosted staff family night in the closed dining room, long tables, paper placemats, crayons, crockpots. A burr of happiness ran through the room, the kind that happens when kids meet the place that takes their parents away at night and decide it's fun instead of a thief. I was wiping applesauce off a chair when the front door opened and a man in a brown jacket stepped in, hesitation in his shoulders. Ryan. Before he could scan for me, James appeared from nowhere like he'd been waiting in the wings. His voice was quiet, firm. Not tonight. Ryan didn't argue. He lifted both hands, nodded once, and backed out. The door clicked. I let out a breath I hadn't noticed holding. Later, after we'd scraped plates and stacked chairs, James slid me a folded note. He left this with Dom at the bar last week and asked us to pass it along if we thought you'd want it. We didn't. I'm not sure why I kept it. You can burn it. Or read it. Your call. The handwriting was neurotically neat. It said he was sorry. It said he had been going to therapy. It said he understood there is no path back to any kind of friendship. It said he wanted to take responsibility in ways that didn't require me to do any emotional labor. He included a list of specific things he'd said and done that were wrong, and, this was new, left star out of the blame column. He ended with, "You saved my life by walking away." Not then. Now. Because that kind of loss forced me to become a man I can look in the mirror at without shame. I don't need you to read this. But if you do, know that I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm thanking you for the consequence. I folded the note and set it in the drawer we keep spare pens and rubber bands in, the graveyard of items you're not ready to discard and don't plan to display. I did not respond. The next morning, I made pancake batter that oozed like a promise and traced letters with a spatula while tiny voices spelled their names in syrup. Later, when I reached into the drawer for a pen, my fingers brushed the paper. I didn't flinch. Healing can be that boring. It's underrated. Spring rolled into summer with a vengeance. The second location got a patio, and with it, a hive of new regulars. The retired librarian who left sticky notes that were poetry in disguise. The college kids who tipped with drawings of space cats. The widower who ordered a booth for one and always finished with dessert to go for a neighbor who probably wore his wife's perfume. The day we got the local paper's Best Small Business feature, the boys took over an entire corner with crayons and applause. I cut the article out and taped it to the office wall next to a preschool masterpiece titled Mommy at Work, in which I was a stick figure with thunderbolt hair and a cape. Close enough. And then, one afternoon while I was labeling freezer containers, my phone buzzed with a text from Audrey. "Heads up, your parents are in town. Word is they came to see you. I told them to leave you alone. Sorry if this stirs anything." I thanked her. I put the phone down. I kept labeling. 10 minutes later, the host picked up the service phone and said, "There are 2 people here asking for you. They say they're your parents." "Should I?" "Yes," I said, calmly. "Tell them I'm unavailable. If they stay, we'll call security. If they cause a scene, we'll call the police." I felt the room noticing me without looking. Restaurants are good at reading weather. After a minute, the host reappeared. "They left," she said. The woman cried a little on the sidewalk. The man looked like he was going to talk to the door, then didn't. I stepped into the walk-in cooler to breathe air that felt like something I could hold. Cold can be a blessing. So can distance. So can the knowledge that you are no longer someone who opens doors because a voice you recognize knocks. That night, I told James what had happened. He poured us 2 fingers of something we keep for good news and bad and said, "You know, every time they show up and you don't go to them, you rewrite the ending. The story thinks it knows how it goes. You keep choosing a different final chapter." A week later, a postcard arrived. No return address. A photo of a roadside attraction, pink elephant statue wearing eyeglasses, like a joke about seeing clearly. In tiny letters, "We're leaving the state. We won't bother you again." No names. No plea. The card smelled like dust. I tucked it behind the best small business clipping, not out of sentimentality, exactly, but out of a desire to remember that sometimes the right thing to save is proof that you didn't imagine it. That they really did go. That you really did stay. Time did what it does when you stop begging it to go faster. It behaved. The boys learned to swim. We took a vacation where the biggest crisis was a jellyfish that turned out to be a plastic bag. Jack started dating someone who made him laugh, like he was inventing laughter. The second restaurant hired a manager so the twins could sleep. We went to parent-teacher conferences and pretended not to cry in a dark auditorium while a group of children in cardboard wings sang off-key about planets. On our 10th anniversary, James surprised me with a photo book. Not the kind full of posed shots and flattering light. The real kind. Blurry mouths mid-laugh. Flour on noses. The first dent in the dining room table. A receipt from the day we signed a lease on the second location. A crumpled page from a notebook where our oldest practiced writing his name and accidentally spelled a word we had to pretend wasn't funny. In the back, an envelope. Inside, a letter from him. It said everything I ever wanted to hear and nothing I'd learned to stop waiting for. Thank you for choosing a life with me. Thank you for teaching me how to make room for silence that heals. Thank you for letting me hold the piece of you that still gets scared and not trying to force it brave. I read it twice. I read it in the bathroom where the mirror knows how to keep secrets. I read it out loud to the dog, who agreed. People sometimes ask me how I moved on. Like it's a hallway you stride down and slam a door. I didn't. I moved forward. There's a difference. Moving on implies erasing. Moving forward is what you do when the past is real and the wound is real and you decide to build a life that doesn't give the wound the best chair in the room. Every so often, my brain tries to throw a memorial for the girl who flipped pillowcases back and forth, searching for science in a feeling. When that happens, I take 15 minutes alone and let her talk. You were scared. You were right. You were brave before you knew you were brave. Then I tell her, thank you for getting me here. You can rest now. And she does. For longer each time. I haven't heard from Star again. Maybe she's better. Maybe she found a donor. Maybe she didn't. I don't wish her harm. I don't wish her anything. Wishing is a rope that keeps you tied to a boat you no longer ride in. I cut the rope. I let the current decide. As for Ryan, I ran into him once, pure chance, at a farmer's market in a town over. He was alone, hands in pockets, studying tomatoes like they might confess. He saw me and didn't approach. I nodded. He nodded back. It wasn't cinematic. It was human. When I got to the bakery stand, I bought 2 cinnamon rolls instead of 1 and took a long, slow bite that tasted like Saturday. Sometimes, on the drive home from the restaurant after a long night, I talk out loud to whatever version of the universe listens. I did it. I kept the promise. Not the promise I said at an altar. The promise I made to myself in the mirror of a hotel bathroom. I will not abandon you again. I will not go back into burning houses because someone else left the oven on and called it cold. I will love who loves me back, and I will love me first enough to notice the difference. Here's what I know now in my bones. Love is not penance. Forgiveness is not access. Blood is not a hall pass to my peace. Closure is not a conversation with the person who hurt you. It's the day you stop explaining your boundaries because you realize they don't require endorsement. They require enforcement. Family is not who shares your features. It's who shares their umbrella in a storm, and their table on a Tuesday, and their last clean towel with the good shampoo when you forget yours. It's who shows up to help you take out the trash after the party. It's who texts home and means I'm up, call me. Healing is not a finish line. It's boring as laundry and holy as breath. It's changing the pillowcases because you like the crisp snap of cotton and not because you're looking for evidence. It's deleting a number and not saving the new one. It's choosing to keep your body whole for the people who would hold it gently if it broke. And finally, I didn't lose a husband and a sister and 2 parents. I lost the illusion that betrayal can be negotiated with. In return, I gained a life that fits me. A man who knows how to stand next to me without taking my place. 2 kids who believe pancakes are a food group and love is the thing you do, not the thing you demand. A restaurant that smells like garlic and laughter and hope. Friends who will drag chairs into a circle and sit with me until the quiet comes back when it wanders. That's my ending. Not a slammed door. Not fireworks. A house with good bones and loud mornings. A woman at the sink, humming off-key, turning toward a voice that says, "Mom, watch," and absolutely meaning it when she answers, "I'm here." Because I am. And this time, being here means being mine.